Hello, everybody. I'm Emma, and we're here to talk about how to preserve early digital photographs. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We'll do a Q&A at the end, so just save your questions, please. The recording will
A lot of our people, without these guys, we wouldn't have been able to transform working gear. And it reopens today. Yeah!
I'm trying to mute whoever.
I have one more surprise for you. Would you like to see it?
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that, everybody. It took me a second to mute him. Okay, so we're going to record it, and the recording will be emailed out to everybody who registered tomorrow. And then any links we talk about will be in the recording description. So Backlog is the company that's putting it on. Backlog is my little company. We're based in St. Louis, and we help smaller institutions bridge the digital divide. So we do archival consulting. So if you need some pointers or need a little bit of help, that's what we work on. We do archival needs assessments, platform hosting. So we set up and host digital archive platforms. And then we also do a lot of genealogy research. And I'm Emma. I founded Backlog in 2021. We've been lucky enough to work with museums like the Walt Disney Hometown Museum and the John Wayne Birthplace. Yeah, if everybody could please stay muted. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Kessler. I'm a writer and a music historian in St. Louis. I run the Archive of St. Louis Punk and do Omeka for Backlog. Okay. Digital cameras are a relatively new thing. The first one was built, portable one, was built in the 1970s. It weighed about 8 pounds. So if you can imagine trying to take a picture with a gallon of milk or a newborn baby, trying to hold that up to take a picture. It was developed at Kodak. The person's name was Steve Sasson, who was an engineer at Kodak. It did not have the kind of resolution that we have now. They didn't really become popular and usable by the public until the 1980s and 1990s. Kodak, Sony, and Casio introduced inexpensive consumer-oriented models at that time. So you can go to the next slide. So it was around this time that the rise of compact digital cameras. These compact were smaller, they had more features, they were more user-friendly. It was sort of a point-and-shoot thing. They had built-in flash, they had they also had auto zooms, and they had LCD screens for the first time, so you could actually see what you were doing, or you could see what you had taken a picture of. More companies got into the market. Canon, Nikon, Sony, and Olympus introduced a bunch of compact models with their own unique features, and this was good. And this also leads to sort of the issue that we're going to talk about tonight. You can go to the next one. Just like the early days of word processing, where you had a ton of different kinds of formats, memory cards and different formats for digital cameras also arose at the same time. There were a bunch of different card formats, and you can see a little collection of them over here. Compact flash, secure digital, which is an SD card, which is what most people have. A memory stick, which we'll see in a minute. Also XD picture cards. They offered different kind of storage options and different kind of transfer speeds. High capacity cards, like the SDHC, which is secure digital high capacity, and the XDSC offered more storage in the range of gigabytes, because before you just had a few small. I know my first camera, I could take maybe about 10 pictures and I had to pull the card out and go all over again. And eventually you get to where you have very large storage and you can have terabytes. We'll go to the next one. SD cards are what most people see now. I think probably the camera companies needed to have something that was a standard. So they got together and they adopted the SD card, which I think most people see. It has all kinds of different capacities, from a few gigabytes to multiple terabytes. This one is a 32 gigabyte. This is a later one. This is only a 2 GB, so there's not much on here. They were smaller in physical size, that made them prone to loss or damage. They have tiny little pins in them, so if those get misaligned, they don't work anymore. But most modern devices have an SD card reader. The computer I'm using right now has an SD slot in it, because they've become so ubiquitous. Okay, you can do the next one. Multimedia cards are very similar. They had a higher capacity. They were compatible with the devices that had these MMC slots, but they were also often compatible with SD cards. They had also, just like the others, they had various capacities and various speeds. So they were an improvement on the other, but not as widely used. Go on to the next one. Memory sticks were only developed by Sony. This is one of the few things in here that I never had an opportunity to use. They were developed by Sony to be used in their digital cameras and other devices, so they were trying to make a standard for themselves. Available like the other ones, there was a memory stick, the Pro Duo and memory stick Micro to fit various devices. Limited compatibility outside of Sony devices. Others had, this isn't a memory stick, but this is a tiny little thing that fits into an SD card, and the Sony ones came in small sizes too, so you had to have your own adapters and things. So it made it a little trickier. Okay, go to the next one. Compact flash cards or CF cards. These offered a higher storage, and they were usually for more professional cameras. This is mine. It's only a 2 GB. That one on there is a 32 GB. And the only thing I ever had that worked with this was a professional Nikon camera that we used for journalism and newspaper. CF cards are generally used in professional grade cameras, although you can get adapters for them that specifically fit these because they are much larger. Most things that are produced now don't have a slot for a CF card, so you have to get some sort of adapter. But they are generally faster and larger. Go on to the next. So most of these, when you are shooting on a camera, what you are creating inside the memory card is what's called a RAW file. RAW file format saves everything about the picture. It saves all the data. It's uncompressed and unprocessed. That makes it easier to do manipulation inside, say, something like Adobe Photoshop or that. It contains all the image data, including the color information, the brightness, and the metadata, like where it was taken, when it was taken, and everything else. It provides greater flexibility in processing. Unlike a JPEG, which is what most people use, it's what I use most of the time, it's not been processed, and we'll see the difference between a JPEG and a RAW file in just a minute. The RAW files preserve the original sensor data, allowing for more extensive adjustments during editing. Okay. Proprietary extensions, like I said earlier, and if anybody remembers early word processors, every company comes up with its own file extension. I can remember trying to use, besides Microsoft Word, you had WordPerfect and other things, and they weren't compatible from one to the other. Camera companies did the exact same thing. Different camera brands used proprietary file extensions for these RAW files that were unique to their own, and this is something that has continued. Proprietary file extensions provide specific advantages, including the potential for camera-specific optimizations. They can also present challenges for long-term accessibility. Because they are not cross-compatible, you have to have the correct software and the correct readers to be able to pull that information off, which can be an issue. Okay. Each camera company has their own. Canon has 3, the CRW, the CR2, and the CR3. The CRW format is the earliest of the RAW images. CR3 was introduced in 2018. CR2 was introduced between then and 2004. So these are just specific to the Canon shoots. Go ahead, which is actually what I have. Kodak had another 3. Each format used by different generations. The KDC format was released in everything before 2001. The DRC format was introduced in 2001, and the K25 was only used between 2004 and 2006. So each of these had a very small window. Nikon had two. One is the NEF format, which is the most widely used. It offers high quality images and supported by most modern photo editing software, which is another concern, whether any photo editing software will recognize those proprietary file extensions. So that's another sort of glitch in this. The NRW format was introduced in 2011 and is used by Nikon's latest cameras. It offers improved image quality, more features, better compatibility with modern devices, which is pretty important. Okay. Samsung, and I know this is sort of an alphabet of extensions. Samsung uses the SRW format for its raw image files. It is lossless compressed format that offers high quality image. So it's not like a JPEG. When you look at it, you are looking at exactly what was shot. It has all of the depth and all of the detail that you need. It is also supported by most modern photo editing software, which is an advantage over some of the others. Back to Sony. Sony has 3 different raw image file formats, with each format being used by different generations. The ARW format is most widely used and offers images with minimal loss. The SRF and the SR2 formats were used by Sony cameras released before 2010. So these had less detail and probably some more loss than the other ones. Since we don't need to go into all of the others, Fujifilm, Minolta, Olympus, Panasonic, and Pentax all have their own proprietary files. This is where some of the issues come in, because you need, if you just end up with a card and you've forgotten what camera it was, knowing what the extensions are will tell you what it's going to work in, how old it is, things like that. So strategies for converting raw images. You can use software tools like Adobe Bridge or Nikon photo viewing software to perform batch conversions of raw files to JPEGs or TIFF. We're at a time where this is a little easier than it used to be. 15 years ago, most brands, there really wasn't any free software that would let you view raw files, and especially not allow you to batch convert. Now, Adobe Bridge is not a free one, but you can actually get to raw files now where you couldn't 10 or 15 years ago. Once you took it, if you didn't have the right software, you didn't have access to it. Adobe Bridge allows for efficient batch conversion, which is great if you were taking, you used to take a roll of pictures and you had 10 or 20 pictures. Now, if you take 200 or 300 photos, you don't want to spend the time to convert each one separately. So this will do a batch conversion, so you can look at things and you can adjust settings like image quality, resolution, color space. The Nikon viewing software offers similar batch conversions, specifically designed for a Nikon camera, ensuring compatibility, and it is optimized for their specific raw files. We come back to JPEGs. If you use your phone to take pictures, it's almost always taking pictures in JPEG, which are smaller. They're widely supported. They're suitable for social media platforms or putting on websites because of their smaller file size. And it is a considerable difference between the two. They offer efficient compression, but it also results in a smaller size and faster loading times, but it also results in a loss of clarity and detail and things like that. So you lose things from the quality compared to the original raw files when you use JPEGs, but it is a trade-off depending on what you're doing with the photo. There are several programs you can use. Adobe Bridge is probably the most comprehensive. Adobe, it is compatible with Photoshop. It's probably the one that people know the most. You can batch convert raw to JPEG or TIFF files. The Nikon software has its own software for viewing and managing and also doing batch conversions. Other options are Lightroom, which a lot of professionals use, or Irfan View. And this is what I was talking before. There was no free software to either view or convert RAW files in the past. So now you can use these programs to convert them to widely supported programs like Adobe's Digital Negative to ensure that you can still have access to that data. Third-party RAW converters, Adobe Camera Raw, Capture One, and DxO Photolab are popular RAW converters that support a wide range of camera brands and file formats, which is important if we're using any kind of legacy formats. Here you can see what the difference is. The one on the left is an example of a RAW photo, and the one on the right is what a JPEG is. Now, the RAW photo is going to take up a lot more space, and you're going to have specialized programs to view it. You can't upload it to Instagram or Facebook. But you can see in the right one that you've lost a lot of the clarity. In fact, it looks like almost like a completely different picture. The RAW preservation empowers archivists to safeguard the complete and unaltered image, data captured by the camera, presenting the most accurate representation of the original photograph. By prioritizing RAW preservation, archivists ensure that the inherent richness and depth of the visual content is retained. So if all you had in 10 years was the one on the right, you wouldn't have any idea of what the actual picture looked like or the actual time of day or where the sun was at. One of your problems is you have to figure out where to store these things. Cloud-based storage is excellent for sharing and easy access to your photos from various devices. It's also essential to have a mixture of both cloud and offline-based solutions. Having offline backups ensures that your photos are protected in the event of a technical failure, data loss, or issues with cloud-based storage programs. It's always important to have more than one version, or have it in more than one place. One of these cloud-based is Google Photos. They accept RAW from various camera brands, including Nikon, Canon, Sony, Olympus, Panasonic, and Fuji. Excuse me. But the specific RAW file formats may vary. It applies compression to an image, especially for high-resolution photos, in order to save storage space. This compression may result in a slight loss of image quality compared to the original file. Amazon also has a cloud-based storage option, supports RAW files from Nikon, Canon, Sony, Olympus, Panasonic, and Fuji. Stores images at the original quality without compression, ensuring no loss in image quality. However, this may consume more storage in the cloud storage plan. One of the other popular cloud storage is Flickr, which is what I use, and Flickr does not accept any RAW files. They will accept large files, but RAW is not one of the things they get. So these two will actually save your RAW files in sort of an archival manner. Offline backups, external hard drives. Most people have an external hard drive or a thumb drive or something they can save things on. Large storage capacities make them suitable for backing up extensive photo collections. They're relatively affordable, portable, and provide fast data transfers. Optical discs, which is what was really in use 10, 15 years ago. CDs, DVDs, and Blu-rays, you can burn things to these discs. You can't go back and edit them on these discs. So it's not like an external hard drive where you can edit it actually on the hard drive. They are a read-only format, but it also means that it ensures the data integrity. They can degrade over time due to environmental factors such as exposure to sunlight, heat, or humidity. So the whole idea is finding the right balance between cloud and offline storage. It's essential for a comprehensive and robust photo preservation plan. So you need to have a combination of the two. Offline backup strategies such as external hard drives and optical discs provide added protection and data redundancy, which is really important if these are the only copies of something you have. Regular maintenance, data verification, meaning that it hasn't degraded, and redundancy are crucial to ensuring the longevity and integrity of offline backups. So you want to check these and not just have them sit and make sure that they are actually staying the way they are, that you don't need to back them up more.
So that's it for this one. Our next webinar is on students in the archive. So how to manage students and kind of set some goals for a student internship or work study if you're at a university. And that'll be on Zoom as well. And then after that, we're going to go into cultural heritage in the era of climate change. I don't know about you guys, but here in St. Louis, we have had a couple of 100-year floods in the last 10 years. And so kind of, I think where we are, you know, storing our collections, we need to think more about climate change. Yeah. And then that's my email if anybody has any questions. And does anybody have any questions about the webinar? Feel free to unmute yourself or throw something in the chat. Okay. So there is no handout, but we will post the recording and send it out.
TIFF files are what most people do their archiving in. I think the TIFF files were in an earlier version of this, but the TIFFs do retain the information you need much better than a JPEG. They also take up more room, and they're not readable by everything and not uploaded. They're not useful for uploading to the web or uploading to social media. But yes, TIFF files are what should be archived, or it's one of the things that you should use in your archive.
So we don't have an external drive like brand to recommend, but just I know I have two, so all my things are backed up on two different ones. And then I think the biggest thing with external hard drives now is chasing the newest USB-C, so making sure you have dongles or converters for that. That's everybody switching to the smaller one now. So Adobe Bridge is a part of Adobe Creative Cloud, and they have a website where you can download things. Okay, if there are no other questions, I will see everybody on the next one. Oh. I don't know about your publisher's requirements.
Are you asking if it'll add extra data to the image? It won't recover anything that was lost when you can. If you took something and converted it from a JPEG or a TIFF to a JPEG and then converted it back, whatever was lost originally is lost for good. And if you start out with a JPEG and you want to change it to a TIFF, it's not gonna bring the clarity out anymore. No.
Okay. Okay. And thanks everybody for coming. Thanks.